This video is brought to you by Sportland. Quality, integrity, and tradition. Alright, this morning we have a call on the beer pouring warm. So the first thing I do is come into the beer walk and it's down to temperature in here, no problems. So we're going to get up to the glycol unit and check to see what's going on with the glycol unit. That's probably where our problem lies. Guess what? I'm back. I've done a lot of work on these units. This is one of my favorite ones because it has its own mini split up here. But yeah, it looks like that glycol unit has a problem because it should be maintaining about 26 to 28 degrees glycol temp, and we're high. And then that bottom pump is at 46, so I bet you we got a bad pump. All right, so we come up to this guy, and this pump's not running. And you can clearly see maybe it lost a bearing, because that looks like bearing dust. These pumps don't last very long. They're under a lot of abuse. This one looks like I installed it 9/14/20, so it's over a year old. So probably going to need to put a new pump on here, but we need to verify that's all that's wrong. We need to make sure it's getting the right voltage and everything. And at the same time, we don't just ignore that one. We come over here. This one's kind of high too, 36 degrees, huh? Running. We're running, but it's a bit high. What's the set point at? 31? Oh, hey, that's not too bad, but I'd like to see higher than 36, or lower than 36, but all right, well, we're gonna go over to this guy, because this guy I think is where our problem is. So for those that are wondering, that are new, these are glycol units. They're tiny chillers. And what they do is they circulate cold antifreeze, but this is food grade glycol. It's propylene glycol. It's in a reservoir up here. This is an older unit. Newer units are a little bit more efficient, but this one has a reservoir. And then they have that bath of solution is refrigerated and dropped down, usually around 26 to 28 degrees. And it's circulated via these pumps. And what it does, pumps it up, and it catches the beer lines. The beer lines coming out of the beer walk-in. The beer walk-in has maintaining, 37, 38 degrees, but the beer taps are a good couple hundred feet away from the beer walk-in. And in this case, the lines, I think some of the lines run underground. I think some of them run above ground. And these glycol lines keep the beer cold from point A to the taps. So from the beer walk-in to the taps, it keeps them nice and cold, so that way you get nice cold beer. You can clearly hear the pump. It's turning on and off on overload. It's locked up. So we still got to check voltage though to make sure it's red hot. The other one's running. It's hot too, but it's running. So you always want to double check. I pulled the pump assembly off of the motor, and then when I try to spin it, I don't know if you guys can hear that, but it clearly has bad bearings. It sounds completely metallic, and it's got rough spots. There, it's trying right now. So yeah, this guy's dead. So I'm gonna go get a new pump and motor. We've changed the assembly together, get some insulation tape. The other one's working. I'm going to turn the unit back on and let the other side run. And then we'll be back and get them up and running. All right, I unplugged the whole unit. You guys may remember, if you guys remember me working on this unit about a year ago or something like that, they had a bunch of burnt up electrical in there. It's a good sign. There's nothing burnt in there. Everything looks okay. I put a new controller on it a while back, and then we put all new switches and thermometers and everything. Looking good. So it's just a matter of unbolting the pump. Usually what you can do is just take it out of the cradle, leave the cradle bolted on, as long as everything fits. We'll do that, and we just got to undo this electrical connector down at the bottom for the MX connector right here. And we can just pull it out, wire it in, put the new one on. That's where we're at. I brought a pump, bucket, always bring a bucket up, and towels and everything, because these things usually make a mess when you have to undo the glycol lines and stuff. All right, so what I did was I disconnected all the wires to that connector right there and undid it so I could just pull the whole thing out. And then that way I I can just, you know, do my swap outside, make my life easy instead of trying to fight it over there. As I'm going through here, I'm taking pictures of everything too. Even though I know how to wire this up, it just makes my life easier, you know, when it's like, oh, I really don't gotta think much, just wire it up the way that it was, you know. But yeah, this shouldn't be too difficult. Should be good. All right, I'm at the point right now where I'm changing the pump, and I've got glycol flowing out, so I'm able to use the bucket. I cleaned it out as best as possible to catch the remaining glycol so I don't have to waste it. And now I'm going to switch out the other side and keep going with this guy. All right, first and foremost, we got 120 volts going to it. I've got this guy connected. I don't insulate it until I turn it on and make sure I don't have any leaks. We'll turn this guy on real quick. This is kind of sketch. We're allowed to run 6.1 amps, and we're right there. Let's give it a little bit. Yeah, we're right there, right on point. So we're gonna let it run for a few minutes, make sure there's no issues, but we know we have the right voltage going to it. Yeah, we're gonna let it run for a bit. All right, we are back up and running, and we just got to give it some time. I'm looking at the sight glass. You guys can't see it, but it's right there, and it's clear, so I don't see a need to put on service gauges. The condenser is clean, the filter is clean, so we're good on that. It's just hurry up and wait now. We're gonna watch this thing come down in temp, make sure everything else works on it. All right, everything is looking good. Pumps are running, life is good on those. Temperatures dropped significantly. It's still not low enough. Our set point is 31. So it looks like the beverage company got in here and upped the set points on these, because normally I see them 26 to 28, but I'm gonna leave them where they have them because they're the magicians when it comes to the beer stuff. I'm just here to just, you know, knuckle bust the pumps and motors in. But yeah, we're looking good. So I'm gonna tell them to keep an eye on it. Fluid's moving like it should be. I put the fluid back in it. Oh yeah, we're flowing nice and good. Everything's looking great. So we're going to give them the keys. This particular video actually has been sitting in my archives. It was completed in 2021, so it's obviously a couple years old, but still relevant information. It's funny when I watch these videos too, because as I'm going through things, I'm like, would I have done things differently now that it's been 2 years since this video was filmed, or a year and a half, or whatever it is? No, it's really cool. You know, recently I went back to my channel and I watched the very first video on my channel thinking like, how is my service diagnosing, how has it changed, you know? Pretty much the same. I watched my first video, which was me diagnosing a beer walk-in that had a blown fuse. And I'm like, as I'm watching it, it's funny because my wife was sitting next to me. I was like, that was like 5 years ago, and I would diagnose this the identical same way. My verbiage would probably be the exact same. It's kind of funny how all that stuff works, but this was just a bad pump. Okay, these little glycol units, or glycol chillers, whatever you want to call them, beer coolers, beer chillers. There's really not a whole lot to them, you know, just a refrigeration section and a secondary fluid, glycol or antifreeze, whatever you want to call it. And it's just pumped through the lines. The whole point, though, I said it in the video a little bit, but the whole point is that you've got beer in the beer walk-in, but you've got to run those lines. In this situation, they go underground into the bar, and then that's where, you know, they can gain the temperature from underground, right? Because there's a lot of heat content in the ground, and so as those lines run through a chase, they're obviously absorbing the heat, and it can bring the beer lines up. And so you end up with a lot of wasted beer, because if, you know, the beer lines get above 40 degrees, you'll start to get foaming as the beer's coming out of the taps, and then the foam equals wasted beer. So they try to keep them cold from point A to point B. The beer lines themselves are usually the fluid that's circulating in there is usually, I'd say, about 10 degrees colder than the medium that they're trying to keep cool, so the beer. That way they can actually have heat transfer, and they just wrap around and are super insulated in the beer line. So there's usually only 2 glycol lines, or maybe 4 glycol lines, in an entire trunk line of beer lines that's running underground or up in the attic, whatever it may be. So they're really not too complicated. They can just be
it can be a little difficult to diagnose like problems with pumps and different things like that. Where it can get kind of tricky is if you have a pump that's not operating efficiently. Another thing to differentiate or explain is that we will often refer to it as a pump when we're talking about the whole assembly. In this situation, in the beginning I said we had a bad pump, but in actuality the motor had bad bearings. But what can cause the motors typically to go bad is the pumps going bad. The glycol in the system actually needs to be changed regularly. The glycol can pick up a lot of contaminants, and especially if it's not maintained properly and stuff. So there can be contaminants in there, and those pumps can get gummed up with gunk, and it gets kind of hard to turn the actual brass pump itself, and then that's usually what ruins the motors and what damages the bearings in the motors. To be honest with you, majority of the failures that we see on these is that the little piece that comes out of the pump that's connected to the impeller, basically, that will usually get rounded out, where it goes into the motor connection. And so anyways, they're really, really not that difficult. It's just the basic fundamentals that we learned, about refrigeration and air conditioning. You've got a refrigeration system and you have a motor that's circulating a cooling fluid, right? Glycol, and that's it. Okay, so nothing too crazy. Thank you so very much for taking the time to watch these videos. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel. Go down into the comments, leave me some feedback, let me know what you think. If you like this video, please consider sharing it with anybody that you know it could be useful for, or anybody that would enjoy it. It really does help the channel to grow when you share this content. A couple different ways, if you're interested in doing so, that you can help by supporting the channel, is to go to my website, hvacrvideos.com. If you're interested, we have merchandise available. We have hats, t-shirts, sweatshirts, beanies, women's shirts, men's shirts. You can also support the channel if you're looking to buy any tools. You can go to TrueTechTools.com. They're a great website that I actually buy a lot of my HVACR tools. They have airflow tools, all kinds of stuff. I've set up an affiliate program with them. I have an offer code Big Picture, one word. If you use the offer code Big Picture on majority of the items on their website, you'll get an 8% discount, and then I get a small commission from that when you use the offer code. That's another cool way to support the channel. You can also support it via Patreon, PayPal, and YouTube channel memberships, of which all of those links are in the show notes of this video. But the simplest way to support the channel is just watch the videos and interact with them, share them. That's the easiest way, okay? So thank you so very much. Remember, be kind to one another. It's a crazy world. You never know what the other person's going through. Not justifying anybody being a jerk, but sometimes, someone might be a jerk to you, and just be kind back to them, and you never know, you can make their entire day. People go through things all the time. I don't often share the frustrations and the headaches, and I suffer from debilitating anxiety and stress. And, I may have alluded to some of that before, but like in the last couple weeks, man, I'm just crippled by it, and it's just crazy. So, most people don't know that about me, right? And it's not something that I have to go out and scream and tell everybody about, but the whole point I'm trying to say is just be kind to one another, okay? I really appreciate you, and we will catch you on the next one, okay?